I like it. It's good. It's good. It's good. So first of all, as Sarah said, my name's Pam. I'm fortunate enough to be her sister-in-law, and I'm just excited to have had the opportunity to be able to come and speak to you guys today. So thank you, Sarah, very much for inviting me to come along. What I wanted to talk about is just tell you a little bit about a project that I co-founded 10 years ago with a friend that works in a small region of rural Uganda in East Africa. And as Sarah said, you know, I'm a nurse to trade. Don't regard myself as to be particularly creative. But what I wanted to talk about today was just the journey that I've been on with that project and what we've managed to do with that project, really, and how that links into where my past cultural heritage, and thinking a little bit about how we can, through this project, create a legacy, really just something to pass on to the people that we're working with in Uganda. So that's basically what I want to talk to you about today. I don't know if any of you saw the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games the other night, perhaps not, but as a Scot I was watching it avidly, and this is a snapshot of Scottish cultural heritage, apparently. But do I really regard that to be my heritage? Partially, but not entirely. Do I regard people dancing around with Tunnocks tea cakes on their head to be my cultural heritage? I'm not so sure. So I'm not completely convinced that that is a reflection of my cultural heritage, although you can tell I'm not from Wales by my accent. By contrast, this slide really reflects my heritage. I grew up in a small rural farming community in central Scotland, in a small family of people who weren't particularly well travelled, certainly nobody who'd had any inclination to go abroad, to travel to Africa, etc. And this was, growing up as a teenager, this was pre the sort of culture of everybody going on a gap year. That wasn't something that really happened where I was from. So when I said to my parents that actually I'm quite keen to go abroad and see if I can do something, and particularly had a heart for going to Africa, then that was something that was quite, my life was quite far removed from what I was about to experience going over there. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about how my cultural heritage fed into this whole story. So in 2000, I made my first trip to Uganda. I was 19 years old, never been to anything like any country abroad like that before. And I absolutely loved it. And it really just captured my heart for that community and the country, really. So much so I decided to go back in 2002. And during both those trips, we were doing like a small development project, and we were looked after by a lady called Edith. So Edith was quite an elderly lady, never had children of her own, but looked after several children that had been orphaned by HIV and AIDS. And the background is, as I'm sure you're aware, HIV/AIDS is very prevalent in Uganda and has essentially wiped out an entire generation of people and left a generation parentless. During the second time that we were there in 2002, Edith became very ill and really was on the brink of death. And for me and a friend who was out there with me, that was a real challenge for us, because we just thought, well, if she dies, who's looking after these kids? And how many more situations are there like that? So at 23, we're just like, maybe we should just try and do something. And so we had this idea of creating some sort of project that would help to support children like that. So in 2003, going into 2004, we sort of cobbled together a bit of money. We thought, well, let's go see what we can do. Let's get £5 grand together. Surely that'll be enough. We'll see what we can start. And then something amazing happened in 2004, and this is what relates back to my heritage. I had given up my job. I was about to go out to Uganda because I was going out for several months to set up the project. And I went to check my bank balance. It didn't have 1.4 million in it. It would have been great if it did, but it felt like 1.4 million to me. I went to check my bank balance, expecting to be overdrawn, having given up my job. And I had £15,000 in my account. And I was just like, well, that's weird. So I went straight to the bank, wanted to sort it out, said, this isn't my money. They said, it's come from Australia. I was like, I don't know anybody in Australia, send it back. Which they did, unfortunately. And then when I came out of the bank, I phoned my mum and I was like, oh, you'll never guess what, I had 15 grand in my account today. And she said, was it from Australia? And I was like, yeah, it was from Australia. And turns out that somebody of the small farming community that I was from, their sister had died in Australia. Their sister was very good friends with my granny prior to emigrating to Australia, and she had a legacy gift that she wanted to give to charity, and he felt it was fitting that it went to our project. And so all of a sudden, with 20 grand in the bank, we thought, well, maybe actually we can do something more significant than we had first planned. So I just want to give you a quick overview of the work that we do. Edith Home, our vision is primarily about empowerment, really. We just want to empower these children who have inherited their inheritance, and their heritage is one of poverty, destitution, war, and the scourge of AIDS. And really our vision is just to change that entirely. And the way in which we want to do that is by providing, well, loving them first, and providing them with education and skills and training to be able to help pull themselves out of poverty, really. And the whole vision is that if we can educate one child within an extended family, then ultimately, if they can be empowered to have a job and have skills where they can create an income for themselves, that they then will go on to empower that whole family, really. But more than that, we, as an organisation, we're a small organisation, and we really just seek to actually really engage the people that are supporting us. So it's more than just sending a text, etc., donating £5. We really want to engage the people that are supporting us to be invested in the organisation and invested in these children's lives. And that sort of creates a real partnership, really. So the way we do that is that we've got three separate strands to the project. One is child sponsorship, so we sponsor kids through their secondary education. The secondary education system in Uganda is entirely fee-paying, and that means you have to pay your school fees, plus you have to bring your own toilet roll, you have to bring your own bedding, your own cutlery, etc. It's an expensive business. And so we pair up sponsors here in the UK with children in secondary education and also in further education in Uganda, so we've trained nurses, teachers, etc. But we also wanted to provide something for the kids that maybe weren't quite so academic, and so we built a vocational school, and within that school we train young people up to basically create, I suppose, and use their skills. So there we do tailoring, and we do bricklaying, and bricklaying and concrete practice it's called, so basically building skills, and also we do carpentry. So this image is just one of our students using the old Singer sewing machines over in Uganda to help learn their skill, really. And again, with the vision being about sort of empowerment and creating income, this slide's just an image of some of the stuff that the carpentry students have made. And again, it's about our investment is into these kids' lives, but also into the community's lives as well, because by creating these skills and these products, they're available for people then to buy, and it sort of, pushes the economy on in this, because it's a really small rural area that we're working in as well. The third strand to our work is that we support families that are headed up by a child, but I'll go on to talk about that later. Slight change of tack. Does anybody recognise this quote from a popular movie but some time ago? Any takers? No, can't work it out. Okay. Maybe I'll help you along. What does this mean to you? Still nothing. Exactly, that's right, well done. I just want to read to you a quote from The Matrix, and eventually, this will make sense. This is your last chance. After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. So why on earth am I talking to you about The Matrix? Well, I think I just want to challenge us to think. In our country, it's very easy to live with any real knowledge of the world's poor. We have windows into it from time to time. We might support comic relief, or, for example, with the Commonwealth Games the other night, there was a text appeal for UNICEF, and all those things are brilliant, and I don't want to take anything away from them for a minute. But it's very easy for us to send that text or to donate that amount at that given evening, and that's as far as it goes. And so we can, after that evening, it's easy just to plug back into our world, our matrix, our Western world, where we don't actually see the reality of how a huge proportion of people are living in the developing world. But also, if we give that small amount, it almost appeases our guilt. Like we feel good because we've done it, and we think we've done our bit, and that's enough. And I think, thinking about heritage again, I think as Westerners, we do have a privileged heritage. If we're born in this country, then we have the NHS that's going to scoop us up when we're ill. We have a benefit system which really does help to support those living in poverty in this country. But this is just not the case for the children that we're working with. And so I think I just want to unplug you from the matrix for just briefly, just to see a bit of the reality. So this is the reality. This is Ruth. Ruth is 7, and she's HIV positive, and she eats 1 meal a day. This is Patrick, this guy here. This is Patrick. He is the head of this family. He is 15, and in his family, he has another 15-year-old brother, but who is probably like a cousin brother from the extended family. A sister, Christine, who's 8, Aaron, who's 6, and Grace, who's 14 months, and he's 15 years old. How many 15-year-olds do you know living like that in the UK? And this is just another statistic from UNICEF. So this is the reality. According to UNICEF, 22,000 children die each day due to poverty, and they die quietly in some of the poorest villages on earth, far removed from the scrutiny and the conscience of the world. When I started Edith's Home, I didn't know it at the time, but I took the red pill. And my eyes have really been opened to the reality of what life is like when you're exposed to some of the poorest people in the developing world, really. I often say that, if I was given this opportunity now, I'm not sure I would have taken it, because 10 years on, far more aware, I've got a family, far more aware of risk, negativity, 10 years worth of culture saying, but it's all corrupt over there, etc., what can you do? All these negative voices. But at 23, I didn't care about that, and I just took the red pill, and I thought, let's just give this a go and see what we can do. But once you have been exposed to that, once you've taken this red pill, it is really difficult. Once you're really exposed to face the reality of poverty, your life is completely changed. And I think that's what's changed for me, and in terms of what I'll be passing on to my family, that has completely changed as well. Because forever, I'm living with this tension of how I live, how I give, how I spend my money, and that's particularly difficult living in the West. I remember the first trip that I ever made to Uganda, so that was back in 2000, and I was over there for a month, and I just came back and my worldview had completely changed, and I'm quite sure I drove my family up the wall in terms of I was just angry. I was so angry. How can we live like this? My parents had bought a new car while we'd been away. I'd been in a long-term relationship, and my boyfriend came around and he brought me cream cakes, and I was like, what are you doing bringing me cream cakes? So that ended 3 days later. So it just really to emphasize the point that your worldview is completely changed. And I think as an organisation, as Edith's Home, I really do feel that we have taken that red pill. We're a warts and all organisation. When you come into a relationship with Edith's Home and relationship with the children that we're trying to help, sometimes it's not all that glossy. It's not a pre-packaged, smiley kid in Africa that everything's going well. Sometimes actually in our sponsorship scheme, kids drop out, they get pregnant, they're abused, and sometimes they don't fulfill the things that as Brits, the things that we place value on, so sort of success and sort of academic achievement and things like that as well. So I think as an organisation, we're just really wanting to present a real picture of what life's like for these families. So those slides that I showed you earlier of Ruth and Patrick, they're the families that we're supporting that are entirely headed up by a child. So I'll just tell you very briefly about how we're standing by those families, really. So this is our 3 social workers. So the social workers that we employ in Uganda go out to support these child-headed families. Basically, usually when they come onto the scheme, they're bereft. They've usually just lost a parent, they just don't know what to do, and the social workers are really involved in sort of putting that unit back together so that they can be a functional unit to try and work together to get food to maintain their standard of living. This slide's just another picture of one of the other ways we're trying to support them. So that young man is holding up like a solar charger for charging mobile phones. So what we're trying to do is encourage them to, again, be entrepreneurial really and create an income for themselves. And just by standing by the side of the road and having a solar charger that people can charge up their mobile phones and charge people to do that is part of that process, really. We have in addition to what I've mentioned already, we're really beginning to think about the legacy that we're leaving that community. And in the past 2 years, we've built 2 buildings because obviously this project can't survive completely on money from the UK, and we really need to be building in some sustainability. And so as a result, we have built 1 building which now we rent out for an income, and that income goes back into the project. We also run the Edith's Home Computing Centre, which is the first internet cafe to come to that area ever. And as you can imagine, that is opening up the world to that community and certainly helping us with the communication in sector as well. But the whole emphasis behind this is that we can become more sustainable, and also that we're putting in projects there which will employ people and pull that whole community out of the situation that's in. That's a long-term view, really. So really, I just want to finish off by saying that what we're trying to do at Edith's Home is we're really just trying to, as I've said earlier, these kids, this community, their heritage is one that is bleak, really. They've gone through difficult times in the past with war, and particularly in the last 20 to 30 years with HIV. And I think what our focus really wants to be is about sort of building a new future for them, so that the kids that we're involved with, ultimately their kids will have a totally different heritage to pass on to their kids in turn. And that's basically what we're trying to do. And hopefully I've been able to give you a bit of an understanding of what we're trying to do and what our passion is, really. That's really all I've got to say. Thank you.